Today, we pause to remember for extraordinary individuals whose work touched millions around the world. Chris Rea, with his gravelly voice and timeless slide guitar, captured movement, longing, and quiet reflection in songs that became part of our lives, from road to health driving home for Christmas. Kevin Arkadie brought truth and humanity to television, reshaping how stories of law enforcement were told, giving voice to complex characters and inspiring generations of writers. Vincent Zampella transformed the gaming world, building immersive worlds that millions still explore today, leaving a mark that goes far beyond screens and consoles. Joseph Rousseau, a legend on the ice, led with discipline, humility, and unwavering strength, leaving behind not just trophies, but a standard of leadership that continues to inspire. These four lives remind us that true influence is felt quietly. Through art, integrity, and dedication, their stories live on, and today, we honor them. The news came quietly, as it often does during the stillness of winter, on December 22nd. As the year drew to a close and streets shimmered with festive lights, word arrived that Chris Rea had passed at the age of 74. There was no clamor, no fanfare, just a gentle pause, like the end of a long journey finally reached for many. His voice had always seemed to come from somewhere far away, worn by distance, shaped by time, a voice that felt as if it had traveled through rain, memories, and countless empty highways before reaching the listener. And now, that voice was silent. Chris Rea was born in Middlesbrough, England, a working-class town built on steel, docks, and long, demanding days. Music was not an obvious calling for a young man raised in practical surroundings. His family ran an ice cream shop. Life was about showing up, doing the work, and moving forward. Yet somewhere amid these ordinary routines, Rea found himself drawn to sound, not loud, not flashy sound, but the kind that lingered. He did not grow up chasing fame. He picked up the guitar later than most, teaching himself by ear, absorbing blues chords that carried emotion more than polish. The slide guitar became his hallmark, not out of trendiness, but because it matched his voice, slow, weathered, honest. In his early years, success did not come easily. Record labels were uncertain what to make of him. He didn't fit the mold of 1970s pop stars. His voice was rough, his songs reflective, his presence quiet in an industry-chasing spectacle. There were moments when it seemed his career might fade before it truly began. But Rea pressed on. He wrote through frustration, illness, and rejection. Each song carried a personal truth. Even in its simplicity, he wasn't trying to impress. He was trying to express. That persistence gradually bore fruit. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, his music found its audience. People listening late at night, drivers on long roads, workers returning home after long, hard days. His songs didn't demand attention, they invited it. Then came the sound that would define him. The slide guitar, notes bending like quiet sighs. The gravel in his voice, untouched, unpolished, it sounded lived in. Every lyric carrying a memory beneath it. Critics often noted that he sang the way people feel but rarely speak aloud. His breakthrough came without fanfare but with recognition. Albums like Whatever Happened to Benny Santini and Water Sign put him on the map. But The Road to Hell cemented his place in music history. The title track became an anthem, not for its volume, but for its honesty. A song about modern life, pressures, and quiet frustration. It climbed charts across Europe and even reached audiences in the United States, where many British artists struggled. Yet fame never altered his essence. If anything, it deepened his reflection. Chris Rea wrote about motion, roads, cars, distance, and time. His songs felt like journeys, not merely physical, but emotional. There was always a sense of something left behind and something still ahead. Then there was Driving Home for Christmas, a song that barely made a ripple upon release. No grand production, no booming chorus, just a man, a car, and a winter drive. Over time, it became rare, a holiday song that felt genuine, not loud joy, but warmth, fatigue, and humanity. Year after year, it returned. Each time, it resonated deeper. Fans often said it felt like memory itself, quiet anticipation, tiredness, and the comfort of being nearly home. For many, it became inseparable from the season. Behind the music, Rea's life was defined by resilience. He faced serious health challenges, including major surgeries that forced him to relearn the guitar. At times, performing as he once did was impossible. Yet he adapted, simplified, and continued creating. A close friend once remarked, "Chris never chased the spotlight. He simply walked his road and let the music follow." Another fan wrote after his passing, "His songs felt like conversations I didn't know I needed. He helped me through nights I never spoke about." Despite worldwide success, he stayed grounded. Interviews were quiet, thoughtful, occasionally awkward. He spoke more about craft than fame, about sound rather than charts. He once said he preferred life on the road because it reminded him who he was. Perhaps that is why his music endured. He did not chase trends or reinvent himself for relevance. He trusted sincerity to outlast noise, and it did. When news of his death spread on December 22nd, tributes came slowly, deeply. Musicians noted his influence. Fans shared memories tied to his songs, long drives, lonely winters, moments of calm amid chaos. Sadness was there, but so was gratitude because Chris Rea offered something rare. He gave people permission to feel quietly. His music never rushed. It didn't shout. It stayed with listeners like headlights on a dark road, steady and reassuring. Even now, his voice seems to travel on, through radios, memories and winter nights. In the end, his story was never about applause, it was about endurance, staying true to a sound when the world demanded louder noise, finding beauty in distance and meaning in the journey. As his voice fades into history, it leaves behind a lasting gift, songs that feel like letters from the road, a reminder that the most powerful music often speaks softly. As the year ends and roads grow quiet, his voice remains, traveling on just as it always did. The news arrived quietly, as winter settled over the nation. On December 17, 2025, Kevin Arkadie passed away at the age of 68. There were no glaring headlines, no fanfare, just a quiet acknowledgement from those who knew his work and a deep sense of loss among those who understood how much he had quietly shaped modern television. For decades, Kevin Arkadie told stories about people living in the gray areas, not heroes bathed in light, not villains cloaked in darkness, but human beings navigating life with all their flaws intact. In doing so, he transformed the way audiences perceived law enforcement on screen. He was born in Washington, D.C., a city defined by politics, power, and complex truths. Stories that were rarely simple, and perspective mattered. This environment shaped Arkadie's understanding of life early on. He saw that people were layered, motives were mixed, and truth often existed somewhere in between. When he entered television writing, he carried this perspective with him. His early work demonstrated a desire to dig deeper than surface-level drama. While many crime shows focus on action or spectacle, Arkadie focused on people, their doubts, their missteps, the private moments when the badge came off and reality set in. That approach found a perfect home with NYPD Blue. The series became one of the most influential police dramas in television history, and Arkadie was instrumental in shaping its voice. His writing pushed the show beyond procedural storytelling. Episodes didn't just solve crimes. They explored the emotional toll of the job, the personal costs, and the moral weight officers carried long after a case closed. A former colleague once said, Kevin didn't write cops as heroes or villains. He wrote them as people living with their choices. That philosophy distinguished him from his work continued to redefine American television. On Chicago Hope, he brought the same honesty to medical drama, focusing not just on treatment, but on ethical dilemmas and human consequence. On New York Undercover, he helped tell urban stories authentically, giving voice to communities too often simplified or ignored. Then came The Shield, a show that reimagined what crime television could be. Dark, unflinching, morally complex, it demanded writers who understood nuance and truth. Arkadie's touch was evident in the show's refusal to provide easy answers. Characters were flawed, choices were uncomfortable, consequences were real. Even in its darkest moments, his writing remained human. He believed realism did not mean cruelty. It meant honesty. One producer said, Kevin never wrote for shock, he wrote for meaning. If a moment hurt, it was because it was true. Off-screen, he was quiet, thoughtful, and meticulous. He listened more than he spoke. He never sought credit or dominated conversations. Instead, he focused on the work, trusting that the stories themselves would shine, and they did. His contributions earned industry respect and Emmy recognition, yet accolades were never his goal. What mattered was whether the story felt authentic. Friends and collaborators remembered him as grounded, someone who arrived early, stayed late, and treated every script with care. One writer recalled, Kevin would ask before every rewrite, "Does this feel real? If not, he'd start over." This commitment to truth shaped a generation of television storytelling and how audiences connected with it. Viewers saw themselves in his work, their doubts, struggles, and quiet moments of strength. In an industry driven by ego and noise, Kevin Arkadie remained steady. He didn't seek the spotlight, but the spotlight found him anyway. Over the years, he continued writing, mentoring, and quietly influencing the next generation of storytellers. His legacy lived not only in episodes, but in how others learned to tell stories with care. When news of his passing spread, tributes came from actors, writers, and viewers. Some remembered his kindness, others his discipline. Many noted how His work changed the way they thought about justice, responsibility, and life in uniform. One message online said, "Kevin Arkadie taught us that truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be told honestly." That sentiment captured him perfectly. He did not write to impress, he wrote to reflect life complex, imperfect, and deeply human. In the end, his story is not about fame, but impact. Not about loud success, but lasting influence. His work lives on in shows that still air, scripts still studied, and writers quietly inspired. As the final credits roll on his life, what remains is a body of work that honored its audience, trusting viewers to think, feel, and engage with difficult truths. Kevin Arkadie may have left the spotlight long ago, but his voice endures, steady, thoughtful, and real. In the world of storytelling, voices like his never truly fade. The news arrived quietly, as it often does in the gaming world. On December 21, 2025, it was confirmed that Vincent Zampella had passed away. There were no flashing headlines, no dramatic announcements, just a slow, spreading realization across studios, forums, and living rooms around the globe. For many, it felt almost unreal. The man who had helped craft entire worlds had left the one he shaped so profoundly. For millions of players, Vincent Zampella was not a household name, yet his work had touched their lives for decades. Late nights, online friendships, campaigns, played in silence or laughter, his influence lived in moments people would never forget. Even if they never knew who had created them, Zampella's journey began long before fame or studios. He was a young man captivated by how games functioned. Not just how they looked, he cared about movement, pacing, the rhythm of action, and the balance between challenge and reward. Those close to him noticed early on, he wasn't chasing trends, he was chasing quality. That focus led him to co-found Infinity Ward, a studio that would forever change gaming. At the time, first-person shooters were popular, but often predictable. Zampella believed they could be more immersive, more emotional, more grounded in experience. He wanted players to feel inside the story, not just control it. This vision gave rise to Call of Duty. From the very first release, it felt different. Tighter pacing, immersive sound design, personal storytelling. Players weren't lone heroes. They were part of a team, part of a moment, part of a mission larger than themselves. The game reshaped the industry. The franchise grew into a global phenomenon, redefining multiplayer gaming and large-scale action. Yet Zampella remained focused on craft. He urged his teams to care about details most overlooked: the flow of movement, animation timing, subtle touches that made gameplay feel alive. A former developer said, "Vince didn't demand perfection. He created a space where you wanted to achieve it." His approach earned loyalty as much as respect. Yet the journey was not without struggle. After creative and corporate conflicts, he left Infinity Ward, stepping into one of the most uncertain moments of his career. Many wondered what would come next. What followed became a remarkable second act in gaming history. With longtime collaborator Jason West, Zampella founded Respawn Entertainment, a bold move, a fresh start. Once again, he proved that innovation came from trust, not pressure. Respawn's first major release, Titanfall, introduced movement and freedom like players had never experienced. Wall running, vertical combat, fluid motion, the game felt fast, alive, fearless. Yet it was Apex Legends that fully realized his vision. Released without fanfare, no massive marketing, no months-long hype, the game surprised the world. Polished, balanced, built around teamwork and respect for the player's time, it became a cultural phenomenon almost overnight. Behind the scenes, Zampella was known not as a boss, but as a builder. He listened, he encouraged, he protected creative voices. While many leaders chased deadlines, he focused on sustainable work. He believed great games came from healthy teams. A designer once said, "Vince trusted you to do your best work, and because of that, you wanted to." Later, as head of Ripple Effect Studios, he continued shaping gaming's future. Guiding teams with a steady hand, his leadership never wavered. Calm, direct, thoughtful. He didn't raise his voice, he raised standards. What set Vincent Zampella apart was not only what he created, but how he created it. He saw games as collaborative art. Every animator, writer, tester, and engineer mattered. Success belonged to the team, not the individual. In an industry often driven by ego, his humility stood out. Public praise rarely interested him. He seldom gave interviews, rarely spoke about himself. When asked about success, he redirected the credit. One colleague recalled him saying, "If players are happy, we did our job. That's enough." Over time, his influence only grew. Games he shaped became benchmarks. Studios he built became models. Players across generations felt his impact, whether they realized it or not. When news of his passing spread, tributes poured. In quietly but deeply, developers shared memories. Players shared screenshots and stories. Many simply said thank you. One fan wrote online, "He gave us worlds to escape to when real life was heavy. That means more than he probably ever knew." Another post said, "You don't have to know his name to feel his legacy, you've played it." Perhaps that is the truest measure of his life's work. Vincent Zampella did not chase fame. He built experiences. He trusted creativity. He believed games could bring people together across distance, language, and time. Even now, his worlds continue to live on in late-night matches, in friendships formed through headsets, in stories players still tell years later. Though he is gone, his work remains active, alive, and deeply woven into modern culture. As screens fade and the credits roll, one thing is certain: Vincent Zampella didn't just build games, he built places players remember. And in those worlds, his legacy will continue to play on. The news arrived quietly, as it often does when the world loses a true leader. On a calm winter morning, word spread that Joseph Rousseau had passed away. There were no grand announcements, no flashing headlines, just a hush that fell over the hockey community, as people paused to remember a man who never sought attention, yet earned deep respect from everyone who knew the game. Joseph Rousseau's story began far from bright arenas or roaring crowds. Born in Canada, he grew up where hockey was more than a sport. It was routine, discipline, and identity. From an early age, he learned that achievement came from effort, not applause. Skating before sunrise, practicing long after others had left, carrying himself with quiet focus. Even when no one was watching, those early lessons stayed with him throughout his life. By the time he reached the national stage, Rousseau was already known for something rare. He played with calm, not flashy, not loud, just steady. Teammates trusted him. Coaches relied on him. Opponents respected him, even in the heat of competition. His moment on the world stage came in 1960, representing Canada at the Winter Olympics. The pressure was immense, the competition fierce. Yet Rousseau played with the composure he had always shown. When the tournament ended, he stood with a silver medal, proud, but quiet, appreciating the effort and teamwork. It represented more than personal glory. That Olympic run marked the start of a remarkable professional career. Soon after, he joined the Montreal Canadiens, one of hockey's most storied franchises. Wearing that jersey was an honor few achieved and fewer carried with grace. Rousseau carried it with humility. Over 14 seasons, he became a fixture on the ice. Not the loudest voice in the locker room, but often the one others listened to most. He played with intelligence and restraint, knowing when to push and when to hold. In 1962, his consistent performance earned him the Calder Memorial Trophy, awarded to the league's top rookie. It recognized talent, yes, but also discipline. Those close to him said he accepted the honor quietly, already focused on the team's next challenge rather than personal acclaim. His career went on to include 4 Stanley Cup championships, each earned through steady play, trust, and preparation rather than showmanship. While others chased headlines, Rousseau focused on the details: positioning, preparation, and respect for the sport. A former teammate once said, "Joseph never tried to lead. He just did the right things and everyone followed. That was his way." In the locker room, he was a mentor. Younger players watched him tape his stick, prepare mentally, and handle both victory and defeat. He taught without words, leading by example. One former player shared, "He showed us that being tough didn't mean being loud. It meant staying steady when things got difficult." That steadiness became his lasting legacy. Even after the cheers faded and the seasons ended, Rousseau stayed connected to hockey. He spoke with respect about younger players, never resisting change or evolution. He believed the game should progress, but never lose its sense of honor. Those who met him later in life noticed the same qualities they had admired years earlier. Calm, polite, thoughtful, a man who listened more than he spoke. When news of his passing spread, tributes came from across the hockey world. Former teammates recalled his quiet guidance. Fans remembered moments that lingered long after the final buzzer. One message online read, "Joseph Rousseau showed us what leadership looked like when no one was watching." Another simply said, "He played the game the right way." Perhaps that is the simplest way to remember him. He was not defined by statistics alone, or by trophies, though he earned many. He was defined by how he carried himself, how he treated others, and the standard he set without asking anyone to follow. In the end, Joseph Rousseau leaves more than records or medals. He leaves an example of humility, discipline, and grace. Under pressure. As the ice grows quiet and the arena lights dim, his presence remains, in the lessons he passed on, in the players he influenced, and in the values he lived by. He may have skated his final shift, but the standard he set endures, and in the long memory of hockey, Joseph Rousseau will always be remembered. not just as a champion, but as a leader whose quiet excellence made the game better simply by being part of it.